The looming impeachment of President Trump is a huge story, but it also poses a challenge for the press. How do you cover something that's undeniably important when there's a sense of déjà vu? Most people have already made up their minds, and the outcome seems like a foregone conclusion. Adam has more.
When President Clinton was facing impeachment, the media treated it as a watershed moment.
Only the third president in American history to face an impeachment inquiry.
It was a ceremony no living American has seen until now.
But as impeachment proceedings against President Trump moved forward this week, the tenor of the coverage has felt different.
Breaking news tonight, was it a hate crime?
On Wednesday, NBC Nightly News moved from the New Jersey kosher market shooting to the Harvey Weinstein settlement to a lethal volcano blast in New Zealand before finally reaching the drama on Capitol Hill.
As a House committee begins debating articles of impeachment.
ABC and CBS made impeachment their fourth story, too, and the New York Times didn't put it on the front page the next morning. Maybe that's because 3 years of Trump have made the extraordinary unremarkable, or because we're pretty sure how this story will end.
There's no chance the president's going to be removed from office.
Then again, over the past few hours, the sense of urgency has ramped up.
We're back on the air right now because the House Judiciary Committee is now voting on the articles of impeachment against President Trump.
And for better or worse, there's still a long way to go.
I mean, as we were talking earlier today, Adam, the cables have filled, they've got a giant gaping maw to fill, and they go 24 hours with this. But I understand why the networks jumped in and out of it. They didn't carry it wall to wall, unlike what happened with President Clinton.
Well, I think one thing that I learned yesterday for the first time for WGBH, I had to watch all day long into the night and attempt to offer.
I'm dying.
And it is exhausting. And it's exhausting in part because you've got two sides that cannot agree on anything. They cannot agree on the most basic of facts. And I think that makes it tricky to know how to come at this as well. But the fact remains that it's a huge, really important story. Thing. And even though I think we do know, I'd bet all the money I've ever made in my life that President Trump is not going to be removed from office. But I feel like you still got, that's another story. But I think you still need to cover it and ideally top the newscast with it, at least as it moves forward from here on out.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck because you feel like you do have to cover it because it is a big deal. On the other hand, I can understand why nobody wants to watch it because it is so depressing. I mean, what is with Jim Jordan and the no jacket? Does anybody know about that? And he's been saying the same thing. He's a man of the people. He said the same thing like 10,000 times now. There was no quid pro quo, there was no payment, there was no this, and then that guy Gates from Florida that was going after Hunter Biden and using cocaine in the car. I mean, the whole thing was so low rent. It was very depressing. Nancy Pelosi talks about solemnity. I don't think there was much solemnity.
Oh, you weren't buying the gentleman. I'll defer to the gentleman routine.
No, and Judd Collins couldn't say solemnity. What did he say? Solemnity or something like that.
I can understand why the interest has dropped off as well. The action was before the House Intelligence Committee, and that got a lot of coverage, justifiably so. The judiciary proceedings have really been kind of just more of the same and nothing new. I just want to talk about one lost opportunity, I think, because most of us can't watch the hearings all day. I would have loved to see somebody do a good 1 hour wrap-up every night. The top excerpts explained with a little bit of context. It seems to me that it's certainly been worth that, and we haven't gotten anything like that.
Well, I think actually you have on the MSNBCs and the CNNs. They do. They take their normally scheduled shows, I mean, for that matter, Fox as well, from different perspective, and then they sort of say, here are the excerpts that we think you should pay attention to and why.
I don't want the commentary with it, though.
Well, what are you just talking about? Just running talking heads?
Here's what you need to know happened today.
I think that would be hard for, because otherwise, contextually, you don't know where it came. I mean, it may be that Jim Jordan said the same thing 15 times. What did he? How different was it in the afternoon than he said in the morning? I mean, those things, it seems petty, but it actually makes a difference if you're really covering this as a historical moment that it is. I think part of the problem is people think they've seen it before because there was such a ramp up to it, and then there was the witnesses that came, and now I think people are having a hard time. Okay, so I thought we did this before. Because the congresspersons are back to what they've been saying before. So the opportunity, I think, for journalists is to figure out what are those stories that not only excerpt the highlights, if you will, but sort of pull together themes other than here's the same thing that people said and here's the same thing that this guy said, and they're mad at each other.
I just think, though, going back to the way the networks handle this, I can imagine being in the room when the discussion came up, and I know what they were thinking, that it's repetitive, it's frustrating, it's maddening, it's not all that interesting, it's not all that compelling. Yes, there's an important underlying theme going here, but it's not nearly as dramatic as the New Zealand volcano, and the networks are in the fight of their lives. They got to get people in to start. It's not that like they're going to skip that part of the story, but they also know it's a foregone conclusion. Every single one of them knows it.
But
that's not the point, though.
But just because it's a foregone conclusion, I wish they would stop with this. It's a partisan proceeding without explaining that the reason it's wholly partisan is because the Republicans are ignoring the facts that are laying there right on the table.
One opportunity I think that is there is for a sort of a, key takeaways from every day along the lines of what you were saying, Dan, but I would keep it really short, 5 minutes, something like that, and do fact-checking in there, because one thing I was struck by yesterday is repeated mischaracterizations. We can't get into it here, but of what Joe Biden did involving his son. I mean, and Hunter Biden, sketchy guy who had a very questionable job, but Joe Biden did not do what the Republicans said.
No, the fact-checking part really bothers me, because we get people calling us on the radio saying, well, what about this, what about that? And they're not, it's not true. Right. And they've heard these things from Republicans or on Fox News, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
But you do hear people on the other networks saying it's not true. Not always in great context.
I think it's something that it feels like you've seen before, and you've gone over certain kinds of sound bites over and over again. That there's a higher level we need to go to other than saying it's not true. That's what I mean by there is an opportunity to sort of extract and figure out how to tell this story in a way that say, okay, I know you think you've heard this. Now here's what this means, and stop going to 15 different people saying, how do you feel about it? I mean, come on.
Exactly.